Welcome back. Let's just jump right into it. Today, we're unpacking an ancient geopolitical blueprint that literally spans millennia. We're going to start with the very first founder of a unified ancient Egypt, and then follow the ripples on his grand strategy all the way to an epic clash of empires almost 2,000 years later. It's an amazing story of ambition, geography, and a legacy written in stone. But, before we talk about grand strategy, we actually have to solve a mystery. Who really founded ancient Egypt? I mean, it sounds like a straightforward question with a straightforward answer, right? Well, it turns out that at the very dawn of Egyptian history, we are faced with the ultimate 5,000-year-old identity theft mystery. Basically, we have two names, one throne, and a whole lot of confusion. So here's our roadmap for this explainer. 1. The first pharaoh mystery. 2. Uniting two lands. 3. Catfish in the Levant. And finally, number 4, the battle for Kadesh. All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the first pharaoh mystery. For the longest time, Egyptologists were completely scratching their heads. You see, the historical record gives us two totally different names for the first king. On one side, we have Narmer. Now, this name is found on actual contemporary archaeological artifacts from the period written inside this royal crest called a Serik. This was his Horus name. But on the flip side, if you look at the later king lists put together during the New Kingdom or the writings of the ancient historian Manetho, the first human pharaoh is listed as Menes, which is a personal throne name. So the huge challenge for historians was aligning the dirt, the actual physical artifacts, with the later historical texts. Were Narmer and Menes literally the same guy? Well, the forensic evidence Egyptologists used to solve this puzzle is just absolutely fascinating. The vast majority of scholars now agree that Narmer and Menes are for sure the same person. It comes down to a few key clues. First, there's the Naqada label found in the tomb of Queen Neithotep, which shows symbols that seem to link the early kings to the name Menes. Better yet is the Abydos seal impression. It literally alternates between the Serik of Narmer and the hieroglyphic game board sign for M, which represents Menes. It's like a giant puzzle coming together. Finally, and this is probably the most conclusive piece, necropolis seals from slightly later First Dynasty pharaohs named Den and Ka contain a chronological list of rulers. And right there, sitting at the very top of the list, is Narmer. So, mystery solved. Narmer is definitely our guy. Moving right along to Section 2, Uniting Two Lands. Okay, first we have to talk about that name. The complete spelling of Narmer's name uses two hieroglyphs, a catfish, pronounced Nar, and a chisel, pronounced Mir. Read together via the rebus principle, you get Narmer. But if you actually translate the adjectives modifying the catfish, it paints quite a picture. Egyptologists translate it as fierce catfish, furious catfish, or my personal favorite, painful catfish. It's kind of terrifying, honestly, but it certainly makes this distant ancient ruler feel incredibly vivid. You definitely do not mess with the stinging catfish. So what did the stinging catfish actually pull off? Well, the best evidence we have for that is the world-famous Narmer palette, discovered at Hierakonpolis. This incredible artifact is the primary physical proof of his role as the great unifier. On one side of the palette, you can see Narmer wearing the bowling pin-shaped white crown of Upper Egypt. On the other side, he's wearing the red crown of Lower Egypt. Now, while the dirt suggests the unification process actually started with his predecessors, it was Narmer who clearly finished the job, conquering the remaining holdouts in the Northwest Delta and merging these two lands into a single, highly formidable state. And the immediate payoff of that unification? Absolutely staggering. The Narmer mace head depicts a ceremony where immense plunder is presented to the newly enthroned king. We're talking 400,000 cattle, over 1.4 million goats, 120,000 human captives. Now, even if these numbers are, a bit of royal PR exaggeration, they still totally prove the immense wealth, the massive agricultural base, and the unbelievable manpower that the unified early Egyptian state now commanded. Narmer had essentially built a superpower. Which brings us to Section 3, Catfish in the Levant. Remember that ancient historian Manetho we mentioned earlier? He left us this super tantalizing quote: "Menes made a foreign expedition and won renown." Again, assuming Menes is Narmer, where exactly did he go? Well, the archaeological record leaves absolutely no doubt. He didn't push south, he pushed northeast, right out of the Nile Valley and directly into the land of Canaan. 33. That is the total number of Egyptian royal seracs dating to this specific period found all across Canaan. And of those 33, a staggering 20 are attributed directly to Narmer. To put that into perspective, only a single serac from his predecessor has been found there, and almost none from the kings who followed him. So under Narmer, the Egyptian presence in Canaan didn't just exist, it absolutely peaked. And they weren't just passing through to, say, trade some pottery. Check out the site of Tel Es-Sakan. This was a fortified, walled city located in the Canaan region, but it was built almost entirely using an Egyptian style of construction. What does that mean? It suggests that Narmer's Egypt had an active administrative, and very likely military colony sitting right there in the Levant. Narmer didn't just unify Egypt, he created a strategic geopolitical blueprint, projecting power into the Near East to control vital trade and resources. And finally, Section 4, the Battle for Kadesh. Let's map this out to see how the strategy builds across the timeline. We start roughly around 3100 BC with Narmer's peak presence in Canaan, building walled cities and leaving his catfish signature basically everywhere. Now jump almost 2,000 years into the future to 1274 BC. The players have completely changed, but the board? It remains exactly the same. Egypt's strategic obsession with this exact geographic corridor literally never faded. In 1274 BCE, this geographical obsession boiled over into the Battle of Kadesh. This was an epic, massive chariot conflict between the Egyptian Empire, led by Ramesses II, and the Hittite Empire. And where were they fighting? Over the vassal community of Kadesh in Syria-Palestine, literally the exact same Levantine corridor that Narmer had pushed into 2 millennia prior. You have two massive empires clashing over the very same territory. So, why did this specific strip of land matter so much to Narmer in 3100 BC and then to Ramesses in 1274 BCE? It all comes down to the big geopolitical why. Geography dictates destiny. The Levant offered highly valuable overland trade routes connecting Africa to Asia. It offered crucial port access to the Mediterranean, and it possessed abundant natural resources, like timber, that Egypt desperately needed. Narmer understood the immense value of these resources right from the start, establishing a foreign policy that would define Egyptian statecraft for thousands of years.
Which leaves us with a pretty fascinating thought to end our explainer today. We've just seen how a strategy formulated by a fierce catfish pharaoh in 3100 BC perfectly predicted a massive imperial clash 2,000 years later. It really begs the question, if geography actually is destiny, what modern empires are still fighting over the exact same ancient trade routes today? It makes you look at a map totally differently, doesn't it? Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I will see you in the next explainer.